Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Tuesday, March 20th, 2018. Today I'm going to recap last night's NBA action, look ahead to tonight's NBA slate, and make picks for the TNT doubleheader. I'll preview the women's Sweet 16 and the women's side of the NCAA tournament. And I'll do the first part of my 2018 Major League Baseball preview, which includes my power rankings for the season, my picks to make the All-Star team, my surprise and breakout candidates for every team, and every team's wild card player for this season. To the NBA results we go from last night. A big win for the Cleveland Cavaliers in the wake of Tyronn Lue stepping away. 124-117 over the Milwaukee Bucks. LeBron James was outstanding yet again. 40 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists. He is making an MVP case for himself. Kevin Love's back from his broken hand. Giannis Antetokounmpo put up 37 points and 11 rebounds in defeat as Tyronn Lue began his leave of absence due to his health issues. And get well, Tyronn Lue. The Cavaliers are now 41-29. Milwaukee drops to 37-33. The Knicks defeated the Bulls 110-92 in the Battle of Tankers. The Bulls sat most of their guys. Tim Hardaway Jr. put up 22 in the win. Cristiano Felicio put up 17 in defeat. The Bulls were without the likes of Lauri Markkanen and Zach LaVine, as the Knicks are now 26-45 and the Bulls dropped to 24-46. The Pacers defeated the Lakers by a score of 110-100. Big win for the Pacers as they improved to 41-30. LA drops to 31-39. Miles Turner put up 21 in the win. Kyle Kuzma put up 27 in defeat. And that's an important win for the Indiana Pacers. Another important win for a contending team in the East in terms of playoff positioning is the Philadelphia 76ers. They defeated the Hornets 108-94. They improve to 39-30, and Charlotte drops to 30-41. Joel Embiid put up 25 points and 19 rebounds in the win. Kemba Walker put up 24 in defeat as Philadelphia continues its playoff push. The Nets defeated the Grizzlies 118-115. The Nets are now 23-48. Memphis is now 19-51. Karis LeVert put up 22 in the win, and Andrew Harrison put up 19 in defeat. An important win for the Miami Heat, 149-141 in double overtime. This was a no-defense game whatsoever. The Miami Heat set a franchise record in points in a game. James Johnson put up 31 in the win. Nikola Jokic put up 34 points, 15 rebounds in defeat, as the Miami Heat improved to 38-33 and Denver drops to 38-33. An important win for the San Antonio Spurs, 89-75 over the depleted Golden State Warriors. San Antonio is now 41-30. Golden State drops to 53-18. LaMarcus Aldridge put up 33 in the win, and Quinn Cook put up 20 in defeat for the Warriors. And Draymond Green is now hurt for the Warriors, as Stephen Curry is targeting a Friday night return when they play the Atlanta Hawks. The Pistons defeated the Kings 106-90. The Pistons improved to 31-39. Sacramento drops to 23-49. Blake Griffin had 26 in the win. Buddy Hield had 20 in defeat. Tonight's game, there's some interesting games on the slate. You have the Raptors at the Magic. The Raptors have to take care of the tanking team. The first part of the TNT doubleheader, Thunder at the Celtics. The Celtics are injury ravaged right now. A couple guys are out with injuries. So give me the red-hot Oklahoma City Thunder and Russell Westbrook to get an important road win at Boston. Clippers at the Timberwolves. That's an interesting game. See if the Clippers can bounce back from their loss against Portland. Minnesota is home, so they should be able to win that game. Mavericks at the Pelicans. The Pelicans need to take care of a tanking team in the Mavs. Utah hosts Atlanta. Same thing for Utah. They need to take care of a tanking team. Pistons at the Suns. That's a poop game. And the biggest game of the night, the Portland Trailblazers putting their 13-game win streak on the line as they host the Houston Rockets. Houston's good in big games this season for the most part. And so has Portland. And you know what? Portland's awesome at home. And you know what? Portland's going to win their 14th straight game over a Houston team that's won 21 of their past 23 games. And Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, dare I say, outplay Chris Paul and James Harden in this game. And watch, the Rockets are going to win this game because I said those words. So I'm taking the Blazers to win their 14th straight game tonight. I'm going to look ahead to the women's Sweet 16 really quick before I get into baseball. Friday night, you have 4-seeded NC State against 1-seeded Mississippi State in the Kansas City region. You have 6-seeded Oregon State against 2-seeded Baylor in the Lexington region. You have 3-seeded UCLA against 2-seeded Texas in the Kansas City region. You have 4-seeded Stanford against 1-seeded Louisville in the Lexington region. And in Saturday's games, you have 11-seeded Buffalo against 2-seeded South Carolina in the Albany region. 5-seeded Duke against 1-seeded UConn in the Albany region. 4-seeded Texas A&M against 1-seeded Notre Dame in the Spokane region. And 11-seeded Central Michigan against 2-seeded Oregon in the Spokane region. And the intrigue here, obviously, in the Saturday games, you have 2 11 seeds embracing Cinderella runs. 2 teams, ironically, from the MAC, which is weird. So good for Buffalo and good for Central Michigan. And then it's pretty much chalk games on Friday, except Oregon State's in there. And Oregon State's a decent team. We'll see if they knock off Baylor or not. I'm not going to make my picks for these games until the day these games are being played. I'll do Friday's games on Friday's podcast and Saturday's games on Saturday's podcast, and the same for the Women's Elite 8 on Sunday and Monday. Baseball season begins in 9 days. I'm going to reveal to you my preseason 2018 power rankings in part 1 of my MLB preview. Part 1, like I said, the power rankings, my wild card players for every team, my picks to be breakout and surprise players for every team, and my all-star picks for each league. And then I'll do more MLB previewing as these next 9 days go on. I plan on doing something on Thursday, and I plan on doing the MLB Predictions podcast Monday, March 26th. All right, to the power rankings. I'm going to go from 30 to 1 because it's more fun that way. Number 30, it's a no-brainer who the worst team in baseball is going to be this season. That's the Miami Marlins. They're easily the worst team in the majors. They traded away everybody, whether Giancarlo Stanton, Christian Yelich, Marcelo Zuna. Next to go, JT Realmuto, Starlin Castro, and possibly Justin Bour as well. They have nice prospects coming in. Lewis Brinson, Brian Anderson. Their rotation is no good. Their bullpen is no good. And Don Mattingly would be my bet to be the first manager fired this season. Although there are other candidates for that as well. 29, the Detroit Tigers. Their offense has a potential to be solid with Miguel Cabrera and Victor Martinez, but those guys are aging guys and really are on the twilights of their careers. Their rotation's okay. Michael Fulmer's an ace, but he's likely to be traded at the deadline. And I wouldn't be surprised if Cabrera or Martinez is traded either. And their bullpen's subpar, although they have some nice arms in their bullpen, like Shane Green, who's shown potential. And they also have Buck Farmer, who's shown potential as well. Number 28, the Kansas City Royals. Their offense is subpar unless they get some breakouts from guys like Jorge Soler and Hunter Dozier, who's a rookie. Although they brought back Mike Moustakas on a 1-year deal. And they also have Salvador Perez manning behind the plate. And I think Perez and Moustakas are trade bait. Their rotation is subpar, especially after the tragic death of Yandero Ventura from last year. Their bullpen is subpar. Actually, no, you know what? It's actually okay, but it's not as good as it was when they were a contender 3-4 years ago. And Kelvin Herrera is their closer. He's probably going to be traded at the trading deadline this year. Number 27, the Cincinnati Reds. Their offense has a potential to be good with Joey Votto and Adam Duvall. Billy Hamilton's a nice leadoff hitter. They have a young stud prospect by the name of Nick Senzel that's probably going to be in the majors at some point this season. He's drawn comparisons to Chris Bryant. He hits with average. Well, what I'm saying is that he could be a Chris Bryant type, except he would hit better by average than Bryant does. Although Bryant's a good average hitter, believe it or not, despite his strikeout and home run numbers. I'm talking about Chris Bryant. And then their rotation isn't great, although they have some possible breakout candidates in their rotation, as I'll mention later in this podcast. And their bullpen isn't really that great, though. Number 26, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Their offense is subpar after trading away Andrew McCutchen. There's still veterans on this team, such as Josh Harrison and Sterling Marte. Gregory Polanco is in his 4th year already, I believe. Josh Bell had a nice rookie season. Adam Frazier's a nice player, but I don't think he's really there long term. Their rotation has a chance to be okay. Jamison Taillon has potential to be an ace. Their bullpen is subpar after trading away Tony Watson last season. Number 25, the Tampa Bay Rays. Their offense is now below average after the tradings of Evan Longoria, Steven Souza Jr., and they got rid of Logan Morrison in free agency. They did trade for Ryan Schimpf, who I think could be a surprise player for the Rays this season, because he's shown a ton of power and pop with the Padres, and the Rays pulled off a trade for him, so I think that was a good acquisition. Their rotation's still good, which is the reason why they're not in my bottom 5. Chris Archer's still on the team. Blake Snell's still around. They traded away Jake Odorizzi to the Minnesota Twins a couple months ago. Their bullpen's okay. They have a good closer in Alex Colomé, who converted from a starter. Number 24, the Baltimore Orioles. The only reason why they're not in my bottom 5 is because they have a very good offense led by Manny Machado, who's moving to shortstop from third base. Jonathan Scope had a breakout year a year ago. They also have Chris Davis, who has 40 home run potential, although his contract is a disaster. They also have Adam Jones still around, who is a good center fielder and hits for average and power. Their rotation is subpar, although they have 2 guys that could be good pitchers on the right day, in Kevin Gausman and Dylan Bundy. Their bullpen is still very good. Zach Britton is coming off an injury, and he'll probably be traded at the trading deadline. Well, this whole roster could be blown up at the trade deadline if they're sub 500 and out of the race, which I think is a distinct possibility, and same could be said for the Tampa Bay Rays. And they also have Brad Bach in their bullpen, who's a decent arm, and they also have Darren O'Day, who's been really reliable for them over the years. Number 23, San Diego Padres. Their offense is going to be improved with the addition of Eric Hosmer. Chase Headley's back on the Padres now. They have a couple youngsters in Manuel Margot and Hunter Renfroe and Austin Hedges who have potential to become stars. Their rotation's very, very subpar. Their number one starter is Clayton Richard. He's really a number 5 starter on a contender. And their bullpen is subpar as well. Although they have a good reliever in Brad Hand, who surprisingly wasn't traded at the trade deadline last year, and surprisingly wasn't traded this winter because Hand was an all-star a year ago, and he is a good reliever. So if the Padres go south this season, which excuse me, is a distinct possibility, he's very likely to be on the move. Number 22, the Oakland Athletics. Their offense should be improved with the addition of Stephen Piscotty. They have a lot of guys that could have breakthrough years, such as Matt Chapman and Matt Olson. Chris Davis has hit 40 home runs the last few seasons. And they have a young prospect, Franklin Barreto, who they got in the Josh Donaldson deal a couple years ago, who could have an impact this season. Their rotation has potential. Kendall Graveman has shown flashes. He was also a piece in that Donaldson trade. We'll see if he finally breaks out. And their bullpen is okay. They let some guys go at the trading deadline last year. They do have some nice relievers, and that's going to be one of their strengths this year, possibly their bullpen. So that's why I think it's okay. Number 21 is the Chicago White Sox. Their offense is going to be improved with possible breakouts from Yoan Moncada, Matt Davidson, Avisail Garcia is still on this team. Jose Abreu is still around. Their rotation should be better with the inevitable Major League debut of Michael Kopech. We'll see if Lucas Giolito makes an impact. And James Shields is still around, although he isn't the same guy as he was with the Royals and even with the Rays back then. And their bullpen is not very good after they traded away Anthony Swarzak a year ago, and Tommy Kahnle too, and David Robertson. So 3 guys they traded away last year from their bullpen makes their bullpen not so good. Number 20, Atlanta Braves. Their offense is going to be improved as Freddie Freeman has help with a possible breakout of Dansby Swanson. They have arguably the best prospect in baseball on their team in Ronald Acuna, who's going to be a very popular pick to win the National League Rookie of the Year award. They also have another possible breakout candidate in Ozzie Albies, who was a good prospect and has shown some potential. The Braves' rotation has potential. Don't forget about Julio Teheran, who was really good a couple years ago but hasn't really been good in a couple years. We'll see. And their bullpen isn't very good. The Philadelphia Phillies come in at number 19. Their offense is going to be very improved with a full season of Rhys Hoskins. Maybe Maikel Franco finally puts it together. J.P. Crawford is going to start the year in the big leagues, as well as Jorge Afalo. Nick Williams got called up at the end of last year. Cesar Hernandez is a good player. Abdul Herrera is a nice player. So that unit on the Phillies is going to be improved. Their rotation's improved as well with the free agent signing of Jake Arrieta to pair up with Aaron Nola at the top of that rotation. And their bullpen's improved with the signings of Pat Neshek and a possible breakout from Mark Leiter Jr. Number 18, the Texas Rangers. Their offense is great with the likes of Rougned Odor and Elvis Andrus. Adrian Beltre's aging, but he's still a good player at this point. Nomar Mraz is a good player. Joey Gallo broke through as a rookie last year. Their rotation's not very good, even though they're going with the six-man rotation. Cole Hamels is still the ace of that rotation, although he's in decline. I think the Rangers should have went out and brought back Yu Darvish, but I think they're going to end up regretting that, and they'll likely regret the six-man rotation. That's going to feature guys like Bartolo Colon, Matt Bush, and a bunch of other guys. Andrew Kashner, I believe, is in there as well. Number 17, the San Francisco Giants. Their offense is going to be improved with the additions of Evan Longoria, Andrew McCutchen, and Austin Jackson. Their rotation should be better with Madison Bumgarner back and healthy. Ty Blotch could have an impact, and Johnny Cueto should be better. Maybe Jeff Samardzija finally pitches well in a Giants uniform. And their bullpen should be better with a possible bounce back of Mark Melancon. Number 16, Toronto Blue Jays. Their offense is decent with their little makeover they did. Josh Donaldson's still around. Curtis Granderson's going to be a nice addition for them, as well as Aledmys Diaz and Randall Grichuk. The rotation is solid with Marcus Stroman at the top, and then they have J.A. Happ in there as well, who's decent. They have Aaron Sanchez. And they also have a nice bullpen, but at worst it's mediocre. Their closer's pretty good, Roberto Ozuna. And they also have Joe Biagini, who had a breakout year a year ago. Number 15, the Seattle Mariners. Their offense is improved with the addition of Ryan Healy. They have Kyle Seager there. Robinson Cano's not the same guy as he was with the Yankees 5-6 years ago. But he can still hit. And they also have Nelson Cruz, who's still a very good DH at his point in his career. Their rotation's mediocre, and they failed to address it this offseason because they really don't have an ace. Felix Hernandez is not the same guy anymore. James Paxton has a chance to become their ace. Maybe that's what they're banking on. But he's had some injury problems in the past. Their bullpen is solid, even though they lost Fernando Rodney when in free agency. Oh, wait a minute, not Fernando Rodney. They lost somebody. It was the Diamondbacks that lost Fernando Rodney. I forgot. They did lose somebody in free agency. I can't think of who it is. Number 14, the New York Mets. They have a great rotation when healthy, led by Noah Syndergaard and Jacob deGrom. We'll see if Matt Harvey puts together a solid season. Zach Wheeler, it's depending what goes on with him. Do they put him in the bullpen to start the season? Roberto Gesellman's shown flashes. Maybe he'll crack the rotation. Jason Vargas is injured. There was a free agent signing. He's slated to go in the back of their rotation. And don't forget about Steven Matz, who's also a good pitcher. Their offense should be improved with a full season of Ahmed Rosario, a healthy Yoenis Cespedes coming back, the re-signing of Jay Bruce. I don't know if Adrian Gonzalez is going to help them. I think he's past his prime. But we'll see. Their bullpen should be improved with the full season of A.J. Ramos. Gerasis Familia's coming back off an injury. And number 13, I have the Colorado Rockies. They're an excellent offensive team led by Nolan Arenado, Charlie Blackmon. They also have some decent players in there. DJ LeMahieu, Trevor Story. Trevor Story really hasn't panned out since he essentially broke out as a rookie in 2016. They also have David Dahl. Don't forget about him. He had an impact for them a couple years ago. He's coming off an injury. And they have an interesting rookie in Ryan McMahon, who's showed potential as well. Number 12, the Minnesota Twins. They're a great offensive team. They led the second half last year in runs scored. Byron Buxton finally played up to his potential in the second half of last year. Miguel Sano is back. healthy after missing the wild card game last year and missing the end of the season the year ago. They signed Logan Morrison in free agency. That'll be a good pickup. We'll see if Joe Mauer has anything left in the tank. Eddie Rosario's a nice player as well. Their starting shortstop, Jorge Polanco, got suspended for PEDs, though. Eduardo Escobar's a nice player for them as well. Number 11, I forgot to do the rotation. I forgot to do the Rockies rotation too, which is okay, led by John Gray. The Rockies have an improved bullpen led by Wade Davis, who they brought in as a free agent. And with the Twins starting pitching, it's improved with the additions of Lance Lynn and Jake Odorizzi. Jose Barrios broke out as a rookie last year. Or not really broke out, but had his moments as a rookie. Irvin Santana is out to start the season. And now with those three and Santana slated to be their number 4 starter, so their rotation's improved. And the Twins are the team that picked up Fernando Rodney, and he'll be their closer. And they also picked up Addison Reed to improve their bullpen. Number 11, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're a very good offensive team, although they lost J.D. Martinez in free agency. They traded for Steven Souza to replace him. Souza's not the same player as J.D. Martinez, but Souza does have 30 home run potential, and he steals bases as well. The Diamondbacks also have an AL MVP candidate in Paul Goldschmidt. Jake Lamb broke out last year. They have a bunch of guys that can hit the ball well in their lineup. Their rotation has potential. Zach Greinke isn't starting on opening day, but he should be fine. Robbie Ray's a solid pitcher as well. Their bullpen is solid, although they lost Fernando Rodney. But Archie Bradley was very good for them in relief last year. Number 10, the Los Angeles Angels. Their offense is going to be very good. Mike Trout's the best player in baseball. They made nice additions with Zach Cozart and Ian Kinsler. Who knows what Kinsler was last year a down year, or is it the beginning of the end for him? Does Albert Pujols turn back the clock a little bit and look like the 2015 Albert Pujols that hit 30 home runs for the Angels? We'll see. The rotation should improve with the signing of Shohei Ohtani, although he has not looked very good in spring training pitching, and he should be in their lineup as well. Oh, they've been calling him the Babe Ruth of Japan, but he has not shown that in spring training. Garrett Richards should be back from injury. The Angels' bullpen is okay. Number 9, the Milwaukee Brewers. Their offense is improved with the additions of Lorenzo Cain and Christian Yelich to go with Eric Thames and Ryan Braun and company. And Travis Shaw, don't forget about him. Their rotation is not good and can use an upgrade at the trading deadline. And their bullpen is very solid with their closer, Jared Jeffries, who they brought back from the Texas Rangers at the trading deadline last year. Number 8, the St. Louis Cardinals. Their offense is improved with the addition of Marcell Ozuna. They also have a Rookie of the Year finalist from last year in Paul DeJong. I'm sorry. Yeah, Paul DeJong. And I'm confusing him with Colton Wong, who really hasn't panned out much over the last couple years. Their outfield has a different look after the trading away of Randall Grichuk and Stephen Piscotty. Matt Carpenter's still around, so they're going to be a fun team to watch this year. Their rotation's very good. We'll see about Adam Wainwright and Michael Wacha, and they return the farm or not. Carlos Martinez is the ace of that staff now. Alex Reyes is a big X factor coming off of Tommy John surgery. And they have some young prospects in the minors who should be in the back of the rotation once the season kicks in. And their bullpen is solid as well. Number 7, the Boston Red Sox. Their offense is going to be great with the addition of J.D. Martinez to go with Mookie Betts, Andrew Benintendi, Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers. Dustin Pedroia really hasn't been the same guy. He's been injured a lot of late. Their rotation's solid, led by Chris Sale. We'll see if David Price returns to form. Drew Pomeranz didn't have a good year last year. Neither did Rick Porcello. We'll see if those guys pitch to potential. And don't forget about Stephen Wright, the knuckleballer, who could be good on the right day. Their bullpen is okay, but has a chance to be good. Depends on how some guys do. Craig Kimbrell's a very good closer. Carson Smith's coming off that injury. He should help them in their bullpen. Number 6, the Cleveland Indians. Their offense is very good, led by Jose Ramirez, Francisco Lindor, and Edwin Encarnacion. Jason Kipnis and Michael Brantley are solid players, but they really haven't stayed healthy that much. Their rotation is the strength of their team, arguably the best rotation in baseball. Corey Kluber, Carlos Carrasco, Danny Salazar. Don't forget about Trevor Bauer, who had a really good year last year. Their bullpen's still good despite the loss of Brian Shaw. Andrew Miller's still around. Cody Allen's still around. Number 5, the Washington Nationals. Their lineup is great. Bryce Harper, Anthony Rendon, Trey Turner, Ryan Zimmerman, Matt Wieters, although they can use an upgrade at that position. Maybe they trade for somebody like a Salvador Perez, like a JT Realmuto. They'll be the 2 best catchers available on the market this year. Their rotation's great, led by Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer. Scherzer will start on opening day. Gio Gonzalez is a solid starter as well. Tanner Roark can be good on the right day. Their bullpen's improved as they re-signed Ryan Kinsler. And they also have Sean Doolittle in their bullpen. Coda Glover was supposed to be their closer last year. Let's see if he puts it together this year. Number 4, the Chicago Cubs. They have the same position player core after there was talks that they were going to trade away possibly Kyle Schwarber or Addison Russell or Ian Happ or Javier Baez. Those guys are still around. And then the 2 key guys of the foundation of this team, Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, are still around. Their rotations improved with the signing of Yu Darvish to go with John Lester, Jose Quintana. Mike Montgomery can make spot starts for them. Tyler Chatwood's going to be their number 5 starter. Their bullpen's improved with the signing of Brandon Morrow, although they did lose Wade Davis in free agency. Carl Edwards Jr. is a nice reliever for them. Number 3, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the reigning NL champions. A very good offense led by Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager, and Justin Turner. And by the way, Turner fractured his wrist, so he's going to start the season on the disabled list. Their rotation's excellent, led by the great Clayton Kershaw. Rich Hill's in there. Alex Wood's in there. Maybe they upgrade that in their rotation at the deadline. I thought they were a candidate to sign Yu Darvish, but they didn't, or re-sign Yu Darvish, I should say. And their bullpen's still very good, although they did lose Brandon Morrow. They did pick up Scott Alexander to replace him. I think he'll do a nice job. Pedro Baez is a solid reliever. Kenley Jansen's the best closer in baseball. Number 2, the reigning World Series champion Houston Astros. Their offense is great, led by reigning AL MVP Jose Altuve, who signed a nice 5-year, $151 million contract extension. Well-deserved for him. He's a world champion and AL MVP, a batting title winner. He deserves to be paid. Carlos Correa is still around. George Springer, Alex Bregman. That's a great lineup, led by those 4 guys. The above-average rotations led by 2 studs in Dallas Keuchel and Justin Verlander. Keuchel's in a contract year, by the way. Garrett Cole was picked up in the offseason to improve their rotation. Lance McCullers Jr. is a solid pitcher as well. Their bullpen is better with the additions of Hector Rondon and Joe Smith. And the number 1 team in my 2018 Major League Baseball Power Rankings preseason edition, the New York Yankees. They have the best offense in the game, led by Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Gary Sanchez, Greg Bird, Didi Gregorius. That's a great 5-sum right there. They have a potential to score 900 runs this season. They have the best bullpen in the league, led by Aroldis Chapman, David Robertson, Chad Green, Tommy Canley, and when he's right, Dellin Betances. Their starting rotation's above average, led by Luis Severino, who finished 3rd in the AL Cy Young voting a year ago, Masahiro Tanaka, CC Sabathia, Sonny Gray. They picked up Gray at the trade deadline last year. He was a nice acquisition for them. and Jordan Montgomery, who was a top 10 AL Rookie of the Year finalist. And they have a ton of prospects in the minors who they'll trot out, both in the position players side and in the rotation and bullpen side. So my number one team is the New York Yankees, although you could argue Houston because they just won the World Series, and you could argue the Dodgers as well for the number one spot. All right, I'm going to go over the biggest wild card player for every team. There's a couple teams where I have two players on there. The Arizona Diamondbacks, I have Yasmani Tomas and Shelby Miller as my wild cards for those teams. Tomas has shown potential to hit 30 home run. It could be a 30 home run guy when he's healthy. But he's been on the disabled list a lot this year. He's not a good defensive player by any stretch. We'll see if he sheds that bust reputation and doesn't make that contract look bad. Shelby Miller's been a bust with the Diamondbacks. He was terrible in 2016. He only made 4 starts in 2017. It actually was 2-2 with an ERA in the 4s. And then he got Tommy John surgery, so he was out the rest of the season. Maybe he makes an impact this season. Maybe he will be their number 3 or number 4 starter this season. My wild card for the Atlanta Braves is Julio Teheran. As I mentioned in my power rankings for the Braves, Teheran really hasn't been the same guy for a couple years now. He's just been good but not great. If he's great, maybe the Braves are a surprise wild card contender in the National League. Baltimore, Chris Davis, if he turns into the guy that he was in 2013 and 2015, then maybe the Orioles are one of the surprise teams in baseball this season. Boston Red Sox, this is easy. David Price. He really hasn't lived up to that contract. The Red Sox made him a reliever at the end of last year. He was okay as a reliever, but he should really be their number 2 starter in pitching up to that contract. Instead, he hasn't done that. The Chicago Cubs, this is easy. Kyle Schwarber, who's had a good spring training. He didn't have a good year last year. He was sent to AAA in the middle of last year, and he came up and still actually hit 20 homers for the Cubs last year. And there's talks about him being traded, and maybe the Yankees could have taken the flyer on him if they didn't get Giancarlo Stanton. But Schwarber's still on the Cubs. Schwarber really should be a DH in the American League instead. He's playing left field on the Chicago Cubs, and he's a below-average defensive player. And if he puts up 30 homers and 100 runs batted in, maybe they do flip him to improve their starting rotation or even their bullpen if a good reliever's on the market, like a Kelvin Herrera type of reliever. Chicago White Sox, Lucas Giolito, who I mentioned before, really hasn't lived up to that top prospect status that he had a few years ago. He's no longer a top 100 prospect. He has a bust reputation. If he pitches like a number 2 or even a number 3 starter, maybe he could shed that bust reputation a little bit. And Michael Kopech is projected to be the ace of the future for the White Sox and not Giolito. And Giolito came to them in that trade for Adam Eaton. James Shields could be a wild card for the White Sox if he pitches well, and maybe they can get something for him at the deadline if they're out of contention. Cincinnati, Homer Bailey really hasn't pitched up to that contract. If he can pitch well this year, maybe he helps the Reds and they're a surprise contender, or it could go the other way. He pitches well and they're not a good team, and he could be flipped at the deadline to be somebody's 4th or 5th starter in case of like an injury happens. To say if there's an injury on the Yankees, he could go there, or if Texas is a surprise team this year, he could end up there. We'll see. And then you have, and the same could be said for Shields, by the way, as I mentioned about Bailey, could end up on one of those 2 teams. Cleveland, I mentioned these guys when I was doing the power rankings. Jason Kipnis and Michael Brantley, they've been on the DL a ton over the last couple years, and if they play to their potentials, like Jason Kipnis in 2013, Brantley in 2014, who knew was an MVP finalist, and Brantley made the All-Star team last year too. If those 2 guys return to the form, Cleveland will be right there with the Yankees and the Astros among the best teams in the American League. Colorado Rockies, Carlos Gonzalez, who they brought back on a 1-year deal. If he plays up to potential and hits 20 home runs, maybe he turns into a trade asset for them, and they can get something to improve their rotation. Detroit, Miguel Cabrera and Victor Martinez, I mentioned those guys before. Those guys really haven't played up the potential. Those guys had disappointing years last year. If those guys hit well, maybe they're traded at the deadline to contenders. I'm more fascinated about Cabrera because they traded away Verlander last year. Nobody thought they'd trade Verlander, then they actually did. Maybe that's Cabrera this year. Houston, Ken Giles is their wild card. That he really hasn't pitched like a great closer since they acquired him. He's had some meltdowns in the playoffs, most notably against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. He really hasn't been the same guy since he was on the Phillies and closing out games for them. And if he turns into a great closer again, the Astros bullpen will be great. Not good, but great. Kansas City Royals, Roland Mondesi Jr., he really hasn't lived up to that prospect type. He got suspended a year ago for PEDs. He has speed. He could hit leadoff. He played in the World Series for them when they played the Mets in 2015. And we'll see if he plays up to potential. And he should be in their opening day lineup. The Los Angeles Angels, Albert Pujols, I mentioned him before when I was talking about the Angels and the power rankings. If he plays like the guy he was with the Angels in 2015, he doesn't have to be Cardinals Albert Pujols, but if he plays like the 2015 Albert Pujols, that offense is going to be great. The Dodgers, Yasiel Puig. Puig had a great year last year, but was that an aberration or not? We'll see. So if Puig has another great year, does he stick around on the Dodgers long term, or is he trade bait to improve their rotation or their bullpen? Miami, Justin Bour, who's often injured, who's shown a ton of power. He was in the home run derby last year. Excuse me. And if he hits up to his potential, he'll be shipped just like his other teammates were. Milwaukee, Eric Thames. Is he the same guy that he was last April, or is he not? We'll see. He's the big wild card on that team. Minnesota, Joe Mauer, I mentioned him before. He doesn't have to necessarily be the guy that won the AL MVP in 2009, but if he hits for average and drives in runs, then that offense could be better than we think. The Mets, two guys. David Wright, who knows if he'll play this year. If he does, maybe as a bench player, an overpaid bench player for that matter. And Matt Harvey, who has shown promise in the spring, but we'll see. He has not been good in a couple years. And if he were to return to not all-star status, but if he pitches like a number 3 starter, that Mets rotation is going to be great. The Yankees, Dellin Betances, who did not finish the season well the last 2 years. He's a guy that always starts well and finishes poorly. He's the 5th best reliever on the Yankees right now, and if he pitches to potential, that Yankees bullpen is going to be very, very special and is going to be by far the best in baseball. The Oakland Athletics, Franklin Barretto's their wild card. He has not lived up to prospect hype in his brief time in the majors, and if he does, that'll be good for the Athletics and make the Donaldson trade look a little bit better for them. And the same can be said for Kendall Graveman if he turns into an ace. Philadelphia, Maikel Franco. He basically only had one really great year in the big leagues. If he hits 20 homers and is an average hitter for them, hitting in even the 7, 8, or even 9 spot, depending on how things go for them, they'll make their offense great. Starling Marte's the wild card for the Pirates, who was suspended a year ago because of PEDs. If he plays well, he's trade bait. The San Diego Padres wild card is Brian Mitchell, who they got in the Chase Headley deal. Mitchell is the throw-it in that deal. And he's shown flashes with the Yankees when he was healthy. And if he is good on the Padres, that'll make the Headley deal look good for them. San Francisco, Jeff Samardzija, if he pitches like a number 3 starter and pitches like an ERA into maybe the 3s or maybe even the low 4s, that rotation might be better than we think. Seattle's wild card's Felix Hernandez. He's not the same guy as he used to be. But if he shows signs of that and is above average for them, then that rotation's going to be decent. The St. Louis Cardinals, a guy similar to Hernandez, is Adam Wainwright, who's had health issues over the last couple seasons. And if he and his teammate Michael Wacha, who I have as the other wild card for the Cardinals, pitch up the potential, that rotation's going to be fantastic. And could slide in for his 2 and 3 as Carlos Martinez has cemented the ace title on that rotation. The Tampa Bay Rays, Chris Archer, he really hasn't had great seasons the last 2 years. But if he pitches great, he'll be traded, perhaps to a team like the Milwaukee Brewers, maybe the Yankees, maybe the Cubs if things don't pan out well for Kyle Hendricks or Tyler Chatwood doesn't work out. If they want a super rotation, he could end up going there and reuniting with Joe Madden. Maybe the Phillies, if their back end of the rotation doesn't work out. But Archer's a big wild card on the Rays. The Texas Rangers wild card ZZ Jurickson Profar, who hasn't lived up to prospect status and hasn't really been a good player for them. He's been injured a lot and is projected to be a bench player for them. But if he plays pretty well, then maybe he turns into an asset for them down the road. The Toronto Blue Jays, Troy Tulowitzki, who really hasn't been the same guy since he was in his heydays with the Rockies. If he hits well, maybe he's traded at the deadline if Toronto's out of it. And last but not least, the Washington Nationals wild card is Ryan Zimmerman, who had a great year last year. But was that for real or not? He's getting up there in age. He's been with the Nationals a very long time. And if he plays well again, then that Nationals lineup's going to be even better than we think it's going to be. Next up is my surprise/breakout guy for every team. There's a couple teams where I have more than one. The Arizona Diamondbacks, my breakout surprise player pick, Ketel Marte, who provides speed. He can hit leadoff for them. He's hit a couple triples for them in the playoffs against the Rockies, especially. I think he had 2 triples in that Rockies wild card game. But Marte's a great player, and he really should be hitting higher in their lineup. He's slated to hit 9th for them, and I think he's going to be pretty good. I have 3 guys on the Braves. I mentioned all of these guys: Ronald Acuna, Dansby Swanson, and Ozzie Abiles. I think all 3 of these guys have a chance to have breakouts. Dansby Swanson was a disappointment last year, as many people pegged them for a lock to win the 2017 National League Rookie of the Year. That's my big fear for Acuna, that he's going to be this year's Swanson, who doesn't live up to hype. But I don't think so. I think Acuna's going to live up to hype. I think Swanson will bounce back, and Ozzie Albies is going to be a great player for them too, as Freddie Freeman has help in that lineup. The Baltimore Orioles, I have 2 rookies having breakout years for them, and Chance Sisco, he's a catcher. He's going to take over for Caleb Joseph, as Joseph goes into a backup role where he's more suited. And Austin Hayes, who's going to be starting in the outfield for them. I think both of these guys are going to be good players for the Orioles, and 2 nice building blocks for them after they inevitably lose Manny Machado and Adam Jones and Zach Britton. The Boston Red Sox, Rafael Devers, who's shown flashes last year. He has 3 home runs this spring in spring training. And speaking of the Orioles, real quick, they're apparently close to a deal with Alex Cobb, which would be a great signing for them, because maybe he's traded at the trade deadline. He could be slated in as their number 2 starter, maybe even their number 1 or number 2 or number 3, to form a threesome of Cobb and Bundy and Gossman. Back to Devers, He's going to be great for them to fit in right in that core with the B guys of Bradley and Benintendi and Bogarts and Betts, and add Devers to that group. That's a nice foundation for a team. The Chicago Cubs, I have 3 guys. Ian Happ, who showed a lot of potential last year. He has 30 homer potential. Albert Almora should be hitting leadoff for the Cubs. He provides speed. He's a good defensive player in center field. And Carl Edwards Jr., who's a nice reliever for them. He gave up some big hits in the playoffs last year against the Nationals and the Dodgers, but he's shown so much potential. He was a good prospect, and I think this is the year he puts it together. The Chicago White Sox, I have 2 guys for them. Matt Davidson, who's shown so much potential, so he's having a nice spring training. And obviously, Yoan Moncada, who started last year in the minors. He has a little bit of some bust potential. He has a little bit of a bust reputation because he really hasn't lived up to that top prospect type when the Red Sox signed him in 2015. But I think this is the year Moncada puts it together, as Moncada and Davidson will provide help for Jose Abreu in that lineup. The Cincinnati Reds, I have 4 guys. Jesse Winker, who's been touted as a great prospect. Jose Peraza, who's shown flashes when he was on the Dodgers and the Braves. Brandon Finnegan, who was a key factor in the Royals' 2014 World Series run as they traded him in 2015 to the Reds for Johnny Cueto. And I think he has very good potential. And Luis Castillo as a starting pitcher for them. So Finnegan and Castillo in their rotation have a chance to break out, and maybe the Reds won't be one of the 5 worst teams in baseball. The Cleveland Indians, I have 2 young guys. Bradley Zimmer, who missed the playoffs last year because of an injury and was touted as a top prospect for them. And Francisco Mejia, who won't make their opening day roster, but should be their starting catcher after the All-Star break. Colorado, I mentioned him in my preview for Colorado, Ryan McMahon, who's going to be their starting first baseman this year as a rookie. He'll probably fit right in with the likes of Arenado and LeMahieu and Blackmon in that lineup. Detroit, Jeimer Candelario, who they got in the Justin Wilson trade from the Cubs. I think he's going to be a good player for them. He's their third baseman of the future. And I won't be surprised if he's a Rookie of the Year candidate. Houston Astros, Alex Bregman, who you can make a case already broke out. But what I mean by breakout is that I think there's a chance he hits 30 home runs this year and has a good average. And Forrest Whitley, who's actually suspended to start the season in the minors for PEDs. But I think he's on their team in the second half of the year. And he should be slide into their rotation to go with Verlander and Keuchel and Cole. Kansas City Royals, Jorge Soler, he really hasn't panned out since the Cubs traded him for Wade Davis. Maybe this is the year he finally puts it together. The Angels, CJ Cron, who's shown so many flashes. And if he has a breakout season, that offense is going to be very good. The Dodgers, I mentioned Scott Alexander. I think he'll replace Brandon Morrow very well, and he'll have a major role in that bullpen. And Alex Verdugo, who's a touted prospect for them, who I think is going to be outstanding for them, and I think will challenge for the National League Rookie of the Year award. The Miami Marlins, I mentioned these 2 rookies when I mentioned them in the power rankings. Lewis Brinson and Brian Anderson. I think they're going to be good players for them, and will give the Marlins fans some hope for the future, as those are 2 guys who I don't think they'll be trading at the trade deadline. Milwaukee, Orlando Arcia, who's a nice touted prospect, and I think this is the year he puts it together. Minnesota Twins, this is a sleeper. Tyler Kinley, who's a rookie, going to be a good part of their bullpen. He's shown some flashes in spring training, and I won't be surprised if they use him in high leverage situations this season. The New York Mets, 2 young players, Ahmed Rosario, who was called up in the second half of last year. He showed some flashes. He's a good defensive player at shortstop. He was a top-ranked prospect by Keith Law last year. He has good speed as well. Brandon Nimmo is slated to be their leadoff hitter. He's had a nice spring training, and I think he has a good impact for them. And he'll have that team making tough decisions for when Michael Conforto comes back. The Yankees, I have a ton of guys for them. Jordan Montgomery, who I mentioned in the power ranking segment, I think he has a chance to make the All-Star team this year. He was a top 10 Rookie of the Year finalist last year. And he's slated to be the Yankees' number 5 starter. Tyler Wade, some people think he's going to be their opening day second baseman. He's either going to be him or Neil Walker, who they just signed a few weeks ago. Wade has shown so much potential in spring training. He has great speed. He has good power. Tyler Austin has a chance to be a surprise player for them. He was on the team last year, and he was called up 2 years ago. He has good opposite field power. Obviously, Gleyber Torres, who's going to be an AL Rookie of the Year candidate this year. He's going to start the season in the minors because he really hasn't done much in spring training, and that's part of the reason of the signings of Neil Walker and the trade for Brandon Drury. But I think Torres will eventually be here. He's coming off Tommy John surgery as well. And also another guy that could be a surprise guy for them is Miguel Andujar, who had a ton of home runs in spring training. He's starting the year in AAA, but he needs work on his defense. Oakland has a bunch of guys who I like too. Stephen Piscotty, who they got in the trade for the Cardinals. I think this is the year he puts it together. And the same goes for Kendall Graveman and Franklin Barreto, who I mentioned as wild cards. I actually think they're going to be good players for them this year. Jorge Mateo and Dustin Fowler are also breakout surprise picks for me, who they acquired in the Sonny Gray trade. One of those guys could be their starting center fielder and make that return for Sonny Gray look somewhat decent. Philadelphia, Jorge Alfaro, who was the key player in the Cole Hamels trade. I think he's finally going to play up the potential, as well as fellow prospect J.P. Crawford, who I like, who's having a good spring training. Probably going to be hitting at the bottom of their lineup, although in his brief audition in the majors a year ago, he really didn't do much. I think this year is his breakthrough. He'll be a Rookie of the Year candidate. Mark Leiter Jr., the nephew of Al Leiter from MLB Network and the Yes Network, showed promise as a reliever last year and made some spot starts for the Phillies as well. I think this is the year he puts it together. The Pittsburgh Pirates, Colin Moran, the key player they got in the Garrett Cole trade, I think will be a great player for them, or at least a very good player for them. And Jameson Taillon, I think this is the year he becomes the Pirates' ace and will do a good job replacing Garrett Cole in that rotation, pretty much. San Diego, my two breakout guys are Manuel Margot and Hunter Renfroe. I mentioned them when I was doing the power rankings. I think this is the year both of those guys put it together. Margot is going to be their leadoff hitter, and Renfroe won't be surprised if he hits 25-30 bombs this year. San Francisco, I think Jarrett Parker is going to be a surprise player for them coming off the bench. He showed so many flashes when he was healthy. It sucks that he was hurt last year. And Ty Block, who I think is slated to be their number 4 starter, is probably going to be their number 4 starter. I think he makes a surprisingly good impact on the Giants team that I don't think they're like the big wild card this season. They could go either way for them. And I think Ty Block will have a positive impact on them. Seattle, I have 3 guys. Ryan Healy, who they acquired in the trade with the Athletics. He really broke out last year. He can hit 30 homers potentially. Mitch Haniger and Taylor Motter are nice role players on the Mariners who shown flashes a year ago and I think can have bigger impacts on that team this year. St. Louis, Alex Reyes, he should be a wild card for them. but he's my surprise breakout player. He's coming off a Tommy John surgery, and maybe they use him as a reliever at first and move him into the rotation. But he's been a highly touted prospect for a long time. I think he'll be great for them. Tampa Bay, Blake Snell, who was called up 2 years ago. He's shown flashes of being a great starter. And also Nate Eovaldi, who they signed as a free agent last year, sat out last year due to Tommy John surgery. He's had a nice spring training, and if he flashes like he did with the Yankees when he was on the Yankees 3 years ago, he could be traded at the deadline this season. The Texas Rangers, Willie Calhoun, he was the prize in the Yu Darvish trade from a year ago. He has 30 home run potential, and he's a Rookie of the Year candidate. Toronto Blue Jays, is this the year Randall Grichuk finally puts it together? Maybe a culture change for him. Team change could help him. I think it does. Ezekiel Carrera is a good defensive player. Let's see if he puts together a good two-way season. I think he's a breakout candidate for them as well. Washington, this one comes with an asterisk, but Adam Eaton, it comes with an asterisk because he really did break out before he was traded. Let's see if he's the same guy as he was with the White Sox. I think he'll be close to that. He's good speed. He'll be their leadoff hitter, maybe even their number 2 hitter, depending on what they do with Trey Turner. And Coda Glover, who I mentioned in their preview, maybe he puts it together and he becomes one of the game's better relievers. Now I'm going to make my predictions on who makes the All-Star team, and this is obviously barring injuries. And I'm going to say off my starting lineup for the American League, and then give you my reserves for the American League position players, and then give you my starters. Then I'll do the same for the National League. The starting catcher, Gary Sanchez. First base, Greg Bird. Second base, Jose Altuve. Shortstop, Carlos Correa. Third base, Josh Donaldson. Left field, Mike Trout. Center field, George Springer. Right field, Aaron Judge. DH, Giancarlo Stanton. Reserves. Catcher, Salvador Perez. First base, Jose Abreu. Second base, Brian Dozier. Shortstop, Manny Machado. Francisco Lindor. Didi Gregorius. Third base, Joey Gallo. Outfield, Chris Davis. Byron Buxton. Mookie Betts. DH, Nelson Cruz. And then the starting pitchers, Corey Kluber, Marcus Stroman, Jose Barrios, Chris Sale, Chris Archer, Luis Severino, Michael Fulmer, Dallas Keuchel, Justin Verlander. And Stroman and Barrios are my picks because every year there's always that guy or two that skips the All-Star game because they're either A, injured, or B, started on the Sunday before the All-Star game. So Stroman and Barrios are my picks for that. And then relievers, Chad Green, Andrew Miller, Cody Allen, Kelvin Herrera, and Craig Kimbrell. National League starting lineup, Wilson Contreras, Anthony Rizzo, Daniel Murphy, Corey Seager, Nolan Arenado, Christian Yelich, Marcell Ozuna, Bryce Harper. Obviously that's not going to be the order, but I listed it in order of positions from catcher to right field, obviously. In the reserves, JT Realmuto, Joey Votto, Paul Goldschmidt, Josh Harrison, Trey Turner, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rendon, Rhys Hoskins, Cody Bellinger, Charlie Blackmon, Hunter Renfroe, and Ronald Acuna. Starting pitchers, Clayton Kershaw, Madison Bumgarner, Noah Syndergaard, Jacob deGrom, Jose Quintana, Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg. And with the guys that will probably get in because of other starters being hurt or whatever, Aaron Nola, Robbie Ray. And in relievers, Kenley Jansen, Wade Davis, AJ Ramos, Brendan Morrow, and Archie Bradley. All right, that concludes part 1 of my 2018 Major League Baseball season preview. Tomorrow's podcast, I'm going to recap the NBA action, look ahead to tomorrow's NBA action, and do my first NBA mock draft. Thursday, you'll recap NBA stuff, look ahead to the Sweet 16, and make picks for the first set of Sweet 16 games for the men's. And then I'm going to go do part 2 of my MLB preview, which is going to be prospect rankings and comparisons for those prospects. Friday, I'm doing first part of my podcast project of doing redrafts. And the first redraft I'm going to do is the 2017 NFL draft. I'm going to redraft it and also make my picks for day 2 of the Sweet 16. And the weekend, Saturday, I'm going to do the 2017 NBA redraft, make picks for the Elite 8. And then Sunday is going to be the 2017 MLB redraft and then make picks for the day 2 of the Elite 8. And then next Monday, as I mentioned before, is going to be the MLB predictions podcast where I'm going to give you all my division winners, award winners, and obviously my World Series pick. I hope you guys have a nice day, everybody, and be safe, folks, due to the weather.